This is an episode that you don't want to miss. It's an episode that we took a lot out of, and I think if you watch till the very end, you will as well. We're talking to Edwina Viel, who takes us through her journey working in the banking and finance world in London and brings us to Dubai as she now owns and runs Cornerstone Clinic. She talks about the challenges, the risks and the lessons and just the genuine things to consider if you're starting your own business or scaling to the next stage. Not to mention just the genuine life lessons plotted all throughout the conversation that I picked up on and I hope that you can too. But she tells the story better than we do, so ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, this is Edwina Viel. All right, Edwina, we finally made it.
Sorry, guys.
Absolutely. But no, it's great. It's great that we're here.
It takes a war to make it happen.
Exactly. I just hope none of the cameras turn off or the mics don't run out of battery. But before we get into any of your level of expertise or the area of your expertise now, we want to get to know a bit about, how you got to this point. So yeah, take us through your journey, how you even got to where you are now in Dubai.
Okay. So my name's Edwina. I was born in Singapore. I grew up in the UK. Went to university, read economics and politics, thought I was going to be a banker forever. I started my first job with Coutts Bank, it's Queen's Money. Then decided private banking wasn't for me, moved more into investment management, fund management. So I worked for Morgan Stanley and then later on UBS. So ran money, then met my husband, got pregnant, then he decided that maybe we'd come to Dubai. So I actually got a job in Dubai, but then having a kid and starting a new company wasn't so easy. So my husband invited me to work for the family business then, which he had with a different business partner. So I just ran it from an operational point of view. And I was thinking, I don't know how to run a business, was what I was thinking. I have no idea. And weirdly, I looked at all my family. So my mother is one of 9 and my father is one of 5. And me and another aunt were the only 2 people who worked a corporate job. Everyone else, I realized my entire family ran companies, they had their own businesses. So I grew up with people running their own businesses. My mom had her own law firm, my dad had his own company. So I realized I kind of grew up with entrepreneurial family, but I didn't note entrepreneur versus corporate. For me, it was just a job. And then looking after the clinic, I was like, what am I doing? I don't have any experience running a medical business. But then I was like, it's the same product. You're still dealing with high net worth individuals. You are still providing a luxury service, whether it's looking after someone's money or it's very transferable skills. So then a couple of years ago, I was offered the space that we have now in Grosvenor House by the team there to open up my own space. So I opened up my own space in 2022. So now it's just me, I run it and I have different doctors. I envision something very different to what they had previously. So my husband works in the business as a plastic surgeon, but I also have like GPs, I have other skill sets, dentists. So I, as a busy mum, I want to one-stop shop for all the facilities. So that's how it came about.
So you spoke to how later on down the line you decide to take the path that as you found out, a lot of people in your family had already forged that entrepreneurial, and how that entrepreneurial mindset was kind of always around. But what do you think originally fascinated you the world of economics and politics? And was there a moment and such that you felt clarity in choosing that path back then?
I love politics. I don't love it as in I don't like to live it out on a day-to-day basis, but I was really fascinated by the world. I was fascinated by different markets. I love how, politics controlled the markets. I wanted to have a deeper understanding of it because I realized it runs your everyday life. And I think to a large extent, people have very small concepts of what it can do. People don't realize that in a war, people make money, but how? How do they make money on these things? How do you leverage this kind of stuff? How do you know where to go? How do you stay calm and actually still look at a stock market? I was in London during the London bombings, and I ran to the window to have a look as, you know, all the bombings were happening. But my bosses were at their desk going, buy. And they were buying, you know, stuff. And they just stayed calm, and they said, these are the stocks to pick up. These are the things that we're going to look at. And they stayed completely calm. They knew the situation. So that comes from experience. So studying economics and politics for me was, I absolutely loved it. And banking is pretty much an essence of the combination of the two. So that's how I ended up studying it.
Those are big companies in the world of finance, UBS, Morgan Stanley, you said, right? What did working in those environments teach you that you use now in your business in a different industry?
Yeah. So, you know, I was really blessed because I had so many different bosses. So in the 10 years, you have different bosses with completely different styles. You learn human management. You learn also how to follow the rules, which a lot of entrepreneurs don't necessarily know certain disciplines. But within a bank, there is the way UBS has a folder that thick on how the logo is to be placed on every document, you know, and it's having and watching the discipline of the marketing department to sit with people who are completely with different skill sets doing exactly the same job. They sit side by side, but you can see how someone tackles it versus someone else. You learn teamwork. You learn whether you are a team player or not a team player. But because I played a lot of sports since I was a kid, probably like yourselves, teamwork comes really naturally, but you can see certain people with egos that they can't work as a team. And entrepreneurs, I feel sometimes being with some of them, they don't work so well as a team. They know how to be the head, but I also have that skill set from the corporate. I think corporate teaches you playing as a team. I also had a boss, my last boss that I had at UBS. My previous bosses were very much like they were going to tell me every day what I was going to do from beginning to end, fully in control of what I was doing. Whereas my last boss, he had a book of £1 billion, and he gave 500 million to my colleague, 500 million to me, and we ran 500 million. So when you're given that level of responsibility, he didn't like completely just, but you know, there was a lot of ownership, accountability, responsibility given to us. And I'm so grateful to him to this day because the buck ended with me. You know, and I was the one speaking to clients. I was the one telling them about their funds, their stock market, how their portfolio was, you know, and you also learn, like in entrepreneurship, to deal with difficult clients. I think that's a skill set you learn, but you are also dealing not just with difficult clients with a lot of money. That's a different skill set altogether, how to manage them, how to manage their expectations. So yeah, I learned a lot.
How did you manage to build that trust in such an industry to make such decisions?
Interestingly, and I compare it a little bit, that I was, you know, I forget that London's so big. And I went to a school that is probably one of the top girls' schools in the UK, and you come up feeling pretty dumb because everyone else, you know, 40% of my year alone went to Oxford and Cambridge. So you don't come out thinking, oh my God, I'm so clever, I'm so intelligent. But you go through your journey. I got to university, okay. Got to workplaces, okay. Then you're kind of there. And weirdly, within these corporate industries, when you get to UBS, you realize that you didn't, I thought, oh, maybe I got here by fluke, you know, but which to a large extent you do. But then you realize that you were good enough to get in, because if you think about how many people were going for that same job, So there's a level of trust already, the fact that you step in, because you don't step into this company. They give you exams, they give you interview after interview. I think I had like 3 rounds of interviews. Then you go and sit different exams for them. Then you meet all the various team, and then they do massive searches on you. So already there is a level of trust that when you do come in. And I think also it's the relationship, because ultimately your boss hires you, right? He's hiring someone because he is good at his job and he can probably see talent. So for him, it's more he had to trust me. But because he trusted me, I took ownership of that trust. Because when someone trusts you, you really have to deliver. And I see these days I can't find that so often. So I took it for granted while I was there, but I look back often to those times of how it happened.
I mean, you kind of already answered it, but growing up, was there ever an inkling like entrepreneurship might be the path, or was it once you actually started to get in those environments?
Yeah, it was totally by accident. I mean, I still love the idea of working for these big corporations, but I had absolutely no desire or even thought that I would ever start my own business. But I love it. Now that I've done it, I'm like, I'm so happy. I think also Dubai gives you those opportunities to start stuff, because I think in the UK you grow up as a corporate monkey and you stay a corporate monkey and never really question it, and you just follow that path. Dubai threw me into entrepreneurship, and I love it. I absolutely love the chance that I have here.
Yeah, so was it as straightforward as, that transition for you and the family coming to Dubai that naturally evoked that entrepreneurship out of you and you wanted to forge that path?
Yeah, so my husband and his business partner had already started the company, but unfortunately, as we started it, they weren't here to manage it, and we had people that they had hired who didn't deliver. They didn't pay the bills, because bills in 17 years ago used to go to a PO box. You hadn't picked up the PO box, so half our electricity bills were there, half our supplier bills were there. So we came to Dubai and we found millions like unpaid. So we didn't have a choice. So my husband and his business partner, they are great and fantastic doctors, but they asked me, like, can you come and like sort this out? So I was like, guys, one bill at a time, let's pay slowly. And we had this amazing accountant who could help us, because our accountants were Indian and they're the sweetest guys, but the suppliers were Indian. And I realized how important it was, because literally based on their trust, it's like, I will get this to you. And then slowly as we worked, we managed to pay things off salvage. So I was kind of thrown into it. And then I realized I could do it. You realize that you just have logistics, you have to stay calm, you just have to go through it really slowly, assuredly, and then win the trust of the suppliers that this lady had unfortunately messed up. But I also was like, okay, I don't know, I guess just having creativity, like how can we get, in the UK, for example, my husband was really well known. He was well known by a lot of nationalities, especially the GCC countries, but we took it for granted, for example, that he would come here and be known. But Australians didn't know him, people from Singapore didn't know him, for example. But, countries like that, we just never had interacted with these countries. But it's like, how do I get into the Australian community? How do you get into other communities that don't know us? But yeah, so it was, looking back, it was really satisfying that we got through that. But at the time, it was like...
A lot of people, like we were talking about before, they want to pivot, right? They want to do something else. They're feeling a bit stuck. And like we were talking, a few of our guests have done that. What's the best advice, do you think, for someone to build that kind of conviction to take that step?
I actually read Richard Branson's book, Losing My Virginity. I don't know if you guys have read that.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
I would read that because he failed more times than he succeeded, you know, and a lot of people just sit there, but it takes so much guts, courage, resilience to actually jump over the line. And then once you jump over the line, it's another 3 years of guts, resilience, and courage to keep going. So I realize that about 80% of people will never have the guts to do it. And it's not a bad thing or a good thing, you know. But if you're going to do it, if you read the book, I just realized you just got to throw yourself in it. I mean, half the time he just threw himself in things and figured it out along the way. But if you never start with that initial skin in the game, you know, if you don't put down, let's say, I don't know, $200,000, you're not going to kind of wake up and go, I need to get that money back. But a lot of people just sit there with brilliant ideas and then go, yeah, maybe. But I think also having a good business plan, you know, really having clarity for a year of what you can do, how long can your business sustain for, having the right amount of cash flow, that also helps.
What did you see was missing in the healthcare market at the time that you guys could do differently, especially given the environment here in Dubai?
Honesty and ethics. You know, for me, I want to sleep at night. I want to give patients the best care. When we moved here, many people said, oh, I can introduce you to a VIP of the top order. But I said, for me, whether it's a PA who has saved up all her money, would pay the same amount of money as a top VIP. So both of them, to me, are amazing clients. I will treat that PA like she was royalty anyway, because for her, it's a huge investment. We want to give them the best care. We want them to know that they're in safe hands, that we're not going to leave them, that we're not going to leave them and forsake them, you know. But to honestly be there for them, give them the results that we want. We manage expectations. It's about honesty. And people need to feel that trust, right? And it takes, it's not like you build trust in a year, you build trust over a long period of time.
And that's where what Jai said before, that trust comes in, not just with your bosses, but it's an ongoing process, right? It never stops.
Correct.
But was there ever something that, you know, believed was true in the healthcare industry before you started that now you kind of think like it was wrong?
I think, yeah, so I always also thought that all people were out to look for the best doctors, because that's how I would search for a doctor. I would search for a doctor that I could trust, that would give me honest, ethical, fair results. But I also realized one thing over time is that also people hunt for bargain prices. And that's the part that shocked me, that you would put your life at risk. We have, for example, changed, you know, breast implants of patients who had been to certain countries. We couldn't even identify the implant make, the model, and it, you know, as my husband took it out, it was literally falling to pieces because of the quality. But people go, oh, it's fine, it's like 20,000 dirhams cheaper, but you get 20,000 dirhams cheaper, and it's a pretty scary thing. That's, you know, that people actually still are okay with that.
In the early days of running Cornerstone here in Dubai, what felt hardest, whether it be in regulation, finance, operationally, emotionally? What was it for you?
Managing the cash flow, because opening a medical business requires a lot of capital. So for us, it's hiring people, but trying to hire them sustainably with a certain cash flow, because each laser machine that you buy is a cost between 500 to 800,000 dirhams.
Oh, wow.
So you've got to work out and assess, is this the right laser? Is this what we're going to buy? And then how do you finance these things, right? Do you put all your cash out there? And how many of them do you buy in one go? Because machines change every year. And then also getting people, so although my husband has been in the market for 17 years and that's what also sustained us, which was great, many of his patients didn't know where he had gone. And I don't know, it's people just don't Google. People then go, oh, after 2 years, doctor, I finally found you. I was like, really, it's not that hard to Google, but that was challenging for us. And also just making sure we had the right team, to have the right nurses, because I started off, I had a member of reception from my old team, a nurse from my old team, but you realize that it takes a long time to explain to new staff that the standard we set is like a gold standard. I'm not okay with silver, I'm not okay with bronze. So to train them all, that also takes a huge amount of time and effort and patience.
And Cornerstone Clinic, has there been a difference in the market, the demand for what you offer compared to when you started to now?
So we started actually at a time maybe 2022, we started a lot with the idea of rejuvenation. So we worked a lot with stem cells, and also always the forefront. But we've been working with stem cells for almost 16 years here. But people then renamed. So we already worked with the idea of rejuvenation, using certain IV drips like NAD. Working with other IV drips, working with a series of blood tests to make sure you're in the right place, working with ozone therapy. So I had a lot of doctors specialized in rejuvenation. So we were doing that 4 years ago, and my SEO guys were like, oh my God, what word is this? But now they're like, oh my God, Edwina, everyone's using that word, rejuvenation or longevity. But the truth is, a lot of people don't know. A lot of clinics will just plaster longevity, but I go, what is your longevity? So we've actually stopped using it. We've stopped using it. I just go back to good old medicine. We have all those facilities in place, but that's not something we use now.
Would you say, so is it fair to say then that what you do is more science-driven kind of services?
Yeah, we do a lot of science-driven services. We want, all our doctors, even our UK doctors, for example, we work now with peptides, but they check the peptides. We work with a laboratory that's incredible. They produce the peptides for us, but we make the diagnosis, but then they also check that this is suitable for the patient. So we don't just dish out a whole bunch of stuff, and IV drips are great, but if you don't have a need for them, why? Why do it? So sometimes we do blood tests and check for patients.
Yeah, can you talk us through the processes and I guess more the time periods that you give for testing these new technologies and stuff that you want to bring into the business, but definitely don't want to rush into it?
So we don't work with anything that isn't legal. We don't try anything. We don't experiment. But the way we deal with patients, that takes time, because it's also understanding how certain patients react to that, also to price points, right? Stem cells, if you do it as an IV drip, it's 100,000 dirhams, so it's not available for everybody. For ozone therapy, we let patients try it. It's no harm. It's just putting oxygen into the body. They notice a huge amount of removal of inflammation. So areas where, like certain back pains you can't get rid of, you do ozone therapy and it goes into the microcirculation. So we saw fantastic results from patients like that. For IV drips, I will never be able to see, unless you have an iron deficiency or, you play 6 hours of paddle and you need an energy boost. I can't necessarily see scientifically if that works, but we make sure that the bags that we get is compounded, they're fresh. So a lot of our bags have an expiry date. So patients do get the benefit of quality things going through their systems. we don't necessarily have a period of time where we test things, but for lasers, we buy machines. So we have a laser just for spider veins. It just attacks the actual vein. So we just make sure that these are high quality lasers that we use. We also look at what patients demand, but then we also teach patients what they would like to have. But even with breast implants, you have to be careful choosing which ones. There's so many things too.
Yeah. And so something we learned in the last podcast, I think, we learned that the term bioindividuality, right, and that everyone's body is different. So have you seen that? Like everyone's body will react differently to different chemicals, different solutions that you have.
Yeah, 100%. We actually work with an incredible dietitian from the UK. So you have the level of health coach, nutritionist, and dietitian, and she's a dietitian that works with genetics as well. And she's one of the few dietitians that actually lectures at all the universities in the UK, like all the medical schools she lectures. I did a spit test with her. I've done so many, because we own clinics, so obviously we've done so many genetic tests, and okay, you get a whole list of things that you can and cannot eat. But she did, for the first time in my life, a genetic test that actually made sense to me. She only picked out maybe 16 markers that were relevant to me. So she said, I have a hunter's body, and it's true. And because she said your temperature doesn't vary. So, when you get sick, some people spike fever so quickly. And for me, I'm like 38 feeling awful. And my husband is like, oh, you're only 38. But it's because my body knows how to maintain its temperature. And, one of the first questions, if I exercise, do I lose weight? And the answer is yes. Well, my husband was no. So he can exercise all he wants and he won't lose an inch, But I also learned so much about my body, all the different markers, different to him. And since I've been doing stuff like that, you realize that we're all individuals. The diet that I can eat, I can't extract vitamins and minerals from plants and fruit. So there I am eating all these salads and it just means nothing to me. Yeah. Whereas so she says, like, for me, I have to have protein with every meal. We have patients, I'm one of them, I'm allergic to plaster. So even from being allergic to plaster, how you deal with patients post-surgery, that's really important. You can also see patients like you can't even get their veins. You can't even, can't get their veins. You have patients who are more prone to certain illnesses, sickness. And also where people collect fat. Liposuction, as from a plastic surgeon's point of view, different nationalities have different quality of fat. So the hardest fat is from Black, then it's Chinese, and then it is white, and then Indians have the softest fat. So, just on this demographics alone, you have all these splits. So it's how you treat people, how you deal with them.
So have you had any peculiar instances when you've had a patient go into a surgery and given their certain biomarkers and whatever else, you guys on your end have had to completely change the processes involved in that surgery for that particular person?
Yeah, you have patients that have illnesses from hepatitis where you double glove, you do everything differently. You have patients that have diabetes, and then again, you would do the surgery in a completely different manner. But apart from that, not really. But most of the time, the anaesthetists and the surgeons discuss what is possible and what's not possible.
Do you think now, there's a lot of research about it and there's a lot of ongoing talks about it, but do you think people are living longer?
I do. I think your generation, for example, they don't drink so much anymore, lots of different choices, but then I think your generation are probably the healthiest, I think. so far. I don't
Maybe,
know.
I'm not sure. I'll take your word for it.
I don't know. I think it's just also based on countries.
Yeah.
I think certain countries, like I think people in Dubai are living longer. I see patients in their 80s, 90s, generally healthy. More people are more conscious now of being over 40 and they're losing muscle, so they're exercising a lot more. I think there's a lot of conscious play, intentional play. I think that will be seen soon enough in the next 20, 30 years. It's hard to say.
What role does technology play in that, do you think, in the next, because it's growing rapidly?
Yeah, I think now AI will help a lot in healthcare, spotting illness, diagnosing illness more accurately, medications. Also, like how a doctor treats someone in India that is actually really smart. If you maybe use AI, someone in America goes, oh, that was a really good technique, and I can use that same technique. So I think technology will definitely have a massive play, and I'm sure soon we can walk through machines and it's going to tell you this is wrong with you, this is how you should eat, or this is your day. I'm not sure. I'd really like to always know.
Do you think, like, with all these findings and stuff and how they compound, it can actually be sometimes a bit over the top and make people too self-conscious, and like sometimes ignorance is just bliss?
Yeah, 100%. So I don't wear anything watch markers to sleep. I don't wear Whoops. I don't wear my Apple Watch, because there was actually a podcast that I listened to and it really resonated with me. I used to wake up going, I slept for 5 hours and my deep sleep was this, and so I should technically feel rubbish for the rest of the day, right? And I'm like, no, because there are days where you don't sleep well, but you're like, I don't know how I functioned the whole day. It was amazing. And then other days you sleep 10 hours and you're like groggy the whole day. So I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to let these markers guide my day, because if I let it happen naturally, sometimes I drank too much the night before, but I come and play paddle and I was like, ooh, that was amazing. But if I listen to my watch that, technically you've only slept 3 hours, you might not be able to perform.
What about the business fundamentals in starting something like this? Not just healthcare, but any business. For anyone that wants to start something of their own, what are the first kind of steps they need to have in place to, kind of get off the ground?
Off the ground, just like to start any business.
Yeah, start anything.
Good cash flow. I think, I used to do a blog called Seashells on the Palm, where I got to meet a lot of mummy businesses who would approach me and say, Edwina, I have this business, this business, this business. And it was really interesting because I could tell in 3 to 4 years max, those businesses were going to collapse. So, first it's partnerships. Who are you choosing? Are you going to have a partner? How you structure it? How you finance it? It's very complicated when you have 2 business partners. It could work so well, or it could be what breaks the company eventually. I knew of these 2 fantastic bright ladies. They were both investment bankers. They both started a mummy business where we paid, 250 dirhams for one of their products. But I knew deep down, these girls eventually, for the amount of labor that goes into it, are you going to keep doing this for 250 dirhams? So you've got to see if the return is going to make you wake up. And I think a lot of people go into it, okay, this is my business idea. I'm going to retail this for this, but my profit is really, if you're going to look at it after you've paid everyone else, maybe 30 dirhams per item. And then if you sell 10, you've got 300 dirhams a day. Is it worth waking up for? So you've got to kind of question, like, okay, then what is going to make me wake up? What revenue is going to say this is going to be okay? Is this business capable of scaling and generating that? And that's where people they come with a bright idea, but Starbucks could have had that problem, but then Starbucks went on to say, we can scale this, right? You can open a second coffee shop. If you look at businesses like Tesco's in the UK, again, same thing. You're selling things for very small margins, but Tesco's worked out an investment formula where Tesco's would figure out how to pay their suppliers late and squeeze their suppliers. And what they do is they put their money that they've gained into a fixed deposit for a very short term, but the amount of money they put in fixed deposit gets them so much it opens one more Tesco's at the end of the deposit. So that's the thing, like, is your revenue stream sustainable? Is it worth waking up for? So a lot of people start a business by saying, I'm not going to invest anything. Well, if you don't invest anything, you don't have skin in the game, you're not going to wake up and then in 6 months you're like, I'm bored. Right?
Yeah.
So that's where you don't want to get to. You want to be where, and then you need to question, why are you starting this business? And I think a lot of people go, I just want to do something that keeps me busy. And a lot of, let's say, mummy businesses start like that. Some are incredibly successful. If you look at Donna Benton, who fellow Australian, she created the book The Entertainer. It was coupons on a table, and then she created this incredible business, and it's $1 million business that she sold in the end. But she had that natural guts of an entrepreneur. She was going to scale it. She was going to make it big. She could make it happen. So some stuff comes out amazingly out of that, but then you need to see why you're starting. If it's just to keep you busy whilst you have children, or is it because it's a side hustle? So your why has got to be big enough that you're committed, and you could say, I've got to do this for 4 years, and I can work on this for 4 years, probably breaking even for 2 out of the 4 years. That's also not easy.
Yeah. And I guess in that, and this is within your business, what along the way have you learned about leadership when managing highly credentialed specialists and working in tandem with your husband as a surgeon at the clinic?
I had to accept a lot of things. So in terms of leadership, I think I like the idea of teamwork. I bring a lot of corporate structure from my corporate days into the clinic. So my staff know where they stand, they know boundaries, but then at the same time, the whole idea of taking care of your team. If they need things, you support them. Right now, my aim during this current situation is not to fire any of my team, right? So whatever I can, we're going to keep going. And they have that trust in me. But then my team are also like, okay, she's paying for our salaries with business in this war situation. So my team are hustling for me. So I have that loyalty of my team also saying, okay, she's taking care of us, we're going to take care of the business. So there's an accountability on them as well. It's like, guys, we've got to do this together. I can't do this alone. So I've been grateful to see that the way I've led them has led them to also say, we've got to make this work for everybody involved. It's a whole team effort. When you manage, highly specialist people, at the end of the day, they're full-on grown-ups. And you've got to have a very honest, transparent conversation. It's got to be a win-win for both parties. It's not me squeezing them or not them squeezing me. It's about when you hit something that you might not have discussed, having open conversations where you can be generous, be generous. At the end of the day, I see them having a business within my business. I can support and they can support, and generally treat them as adults. And then along with my husband, and a lot of people say, how do you work with your husband? I think it's really complicated, but then it's not complicated. So he's a doctor. He doesn't enjoy hiring, firing. He doesn't enjoy looking at the accounts. He just wants to be a doctor. He's happy being one of the employees. So I treat him as such. But in the past, I used to say, come and sit with me and help me figure it out. And he just
can't.
no, not interested. I mean, I can ask him for, a few questions here and there. And actually, the one thing he does have, he has an amazing gut instinct. He doesn't know how. He's a visionary. He knows years ago from Italy that London's going to be the new place. And London was a great place, and it was a new place to go. And he's like, Dubai is a great place. But the problem is putting all the logistics in place for the visionary. That was me. So he'll come up with these grand ideas. Okay, great on the grand ideas, but we're going to make it work. But then we started accepting each other's abilities. And so I was like, okay, usually he has a good gut instinct. I just have to follow it. But I also have to tell him I have limitations. I have 4 children. I have other doctors to run, But then he also never gets upset when I hire people to do what I hope my husband would do with me. And then joining EO was honestly the best thing, because I could have those business conversations, those finance conversations, those structural conversations with other members of EO where I'm like, okay, I get to learn from them. So that part, I finally, after I joined EO only 3 years ago, so before that I was very lonely.
Well, I guess for those who don't know, just help everyone understand what is EO, and can you really just dissect the impact that it's had on you?
So EO is an organization for entrepreneurs. There are about 22,000 EO members around the world. I joined 3 years ago. Lots of people have, kept coming up to me saying, join, join, join. But I didn't really know what I was joining. It just sounded like a cult. But when I joined, it was such a relief to be able to sit with entrepreneurs of all communities, learn from them. And, Dubai can be quite a lonely place because it's still culturally conservative. I couldn't necessarily go up to certain cultures, and most men drive businesses here. I, as a woman, couldn't always. I can, but I also have to respect the wife, that I don't sit there and talk business with her husband. So I was always mindful that, I didn't want to disrespect certain cultures for that. So it was really nice in EO. I could talk business with anyone and everyone, both men, both women. And it was it was like, as one other EO member says, it was like you're in a desert and you get to an oasis and you're like, you find people of your tribe, right?
No, it's very interesting. And I think even just us being around EO members, not necessarily in EO already, it's something that we strive to be a part of, definitely. But how important is that to find your people and just be around the people that help you grow as a person?
Hugely, actually, because, from a husband and wife point of view, I don't necessarily have those opportunities. And, when your husband says you're doing well, what does that mean? But whereas another entrepreneur will come in, and I joined the board this year and obviously was a little bit intimidated by the size of certain businesses, and they're thinking that I had a lesser, smaller voice. But then my forum buddy was like, we are all peers, speak your mind. And I did speak my mind, and they took some of my ideas to fruition. And, so that built my confidence to be with other entrepreneurs, to know that it doesn't matter the size of your business, you can still bring in good ideas to the table, which then gives you confidence within your own business that actually I have been on the right track. I've also been able to learn and be inspired by other entrepreneurs. I mean, there are some of them that get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm never going to do that. But, you know, they get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Everything's done by 7 a.m. And you're like, whew, okay, I don't need to get up at 4, but, you know, I can get moving and I could structure my day, how you structure your day, what you say goodbye to. You have to sacrifice certain things that actually eat your time that you're not aware of. So just having like lots of mirrors being reflected up and saying, okay, is this a waste of time? Is this something I want to invest my time with? Are these people going to take me on my journey, or are these people kind of not making me feel good enough or strong enough? So you just discard certain things in your life, and then you just grow, and then you're just constantly inspired by all the other entrepreneurs, because some of their minds are just incredible, and I'm just so happy to be just, you know, by osmosis, just learning from them.
While we're on the topic of people and the people around you, and it kind of goes back to what you were saying before, within your business, how, you know, you're just helping each other out. How important is it to build a business, an environment that's more of a community rather than, you know, just, oh, I have to go to work today, and people just come because they need to?
Yeah, I think community and culture is so important. I have never, in 17 years, I don't have anyone toxic in a business. If I have anyone toxic, they're pretty much carved out ASAP, because a toxic person, no matter how highly skilled they are, they can kill your business. They are the tumor and the cancer of the business, and they will not help. And I want all my staff to know that they are safe. We also don't allow our staff to speak in their different languages, because imagine if to Filipinos they're saying they're laughing and joking, and you are of a different culture, you walk in, it sounds like they're talking about you. You just want everyone to feel safe. You don't want back talking. If someone's not pulling their weight, I say, don't discuss it with the whole team. Come to me, and I'll make that person work. I will bring it to their attention. And often, you know, by the time they brought it to my attention, I already had a gut feeling about that person not pulling their weight. And often it's just sitting down and saying, why? Sometimes I've had staff who've been with me a long time, but then for about 6 months, their performance is just this weird, shoddy. But then you realize they're going through something at home. But so you want to be there in these moments. You want to make them know that the infrastructure is there to come and speak to me, to be flexible with them when they have children, when they have babies, when they have kids. But, you know, one of the girls, she used to stay until so late. And then my team were like, aren't you going to calculate against her? She goes, nah, because I know Edwina, she will basically say, if I have an appointment or something, she just lets me go. So if I don't calculate with her, she doesn't calculate with me. And I love that. But I also have learned not to be a fool. I don't give before they give. I used to be so generous. I used to be like, yeah, no problem, you know, that was my nature. But now I watch them. I watch them very carefully. When a person keeps coming and taking, and I'm like, well, you know, since you play by the rules, I'll play by the rules.
On flicking back to a previous conversation on how it seems so natural, the responsibilities that you and your husband set out initially within Cornerstone, and now you actually being the EO membership chair-elect, how do you feel the processes that you had from deciphering who to hire and fire has kind of come into that role when you've got hundreds of brilliant entrepreneurs who, you know, maybe or maybe not deserve such a place in such an amazing community? How do you cut? Yeah.
It's hard. It's really hard. But EO is also a community and a culture. We have met some incredible entrepreneurs, but again, anyone with a slightly toxic personality, ego, you wouldn't want them in EO, even if they could teach you everything. But then you're like, you know, the question is, are you forum worthy? Is a forum going to want you? And that's how, so a lot of people have the same credentials. They run a great business of a certain size, but my question is, are you forum worthy? And that is a very hard thing to feel. But so far, everyone we've taken in this year, they've been lapped up. Why? Because I literally want to be blown away whether someone's super nice, super kind, but still has an entrepreneurial spirit. People who've lived all over the world, that's also exciting. There's so many factors to it, but the main thing is, are you someone who will add value as well as take value? And do you bring interesting conversation? We've had people who have been so amazing, who've achieved so much, but we also didn't take them on because they couldn't really communicate.
Yeah.
And it sounds really bad, but you know, how are you going to communicate in forum? How are you going to share your story in forum? So is it right or wrong? I don't know. But as a forum, I have to look, is anyone going to take this person into forum? If both of us say no, then we pause them rather than reject them.
Moving a bit to the situation now without trying to offend anyone, how do you navigate this time? And it's a bit like COVID, isn't it? It's a bit, everything's slowed down a bit. I mean, maybe not to that extent where everyone was in lockdown, things were completely shut. But how do you navigate this slowdown? And what can you tell other businesses to do in a time like this?
So I feel very safe being here, and like you guys, we all feel safe. But my thing is to stay positive. It's really easy to spiral. It's really easy to sit in a room of fearful people, but you can't control any of that. But what you can control, so on the Saturday it started, on the Monday I had my whole team in. My husband was still in Sri Lanka, but the worst thing for any of my staff to do was to scroll, right? If you scroll, you're picking up all sorts of false information. You don't really know what's true, not true. And then you start having all these thoughts. And the whole idea is to have a sound mind. If you have a sound mind and you're positive, you'll find opportunities, you'll connect with people, you'll bond with people, and more good things will come out of it. And then be creative as whether it's an EO community, how can we help different businesses? How can we support? If a whole bunch of negative people sit together, that's not going to produce anything. And yeah, it's tough. And obviously we always have a new plan every 24 hours, 40 hours. Ideas right now, you've got to be flexible. You've also got to, whether you can or you can't, but my feeling is we should always support businesses. A lot of people suddenly have done this with cash, but I'm like, go support. Like last night, I took the kids, we had pizza in the restaurant because we want that pizza restaurant to survive. It can be really small acts. It's, someone kindly offered me a massage because this hotel had just opened up their spa in the Grosvenor House. So you give a massive tip to the girl because she's not getting tips, and leaving maybe 20 dirhams for the guy who's filling up petrol because he's probably doing less cars. Just the more you give out, it's weirdly people have more in their pockets and they also spend in return. But if everyone just blocks the chain of cash flow, that's when problems start. So it's being sensible both ways. It's being definitely flexible, and speaking to people in the same industry, talking to them, sitting with different, as a business, sit with people who do marketing, saying, how can we get out there? There are positive things that you still can do. There is still population. On some days, there's traffic everywhere now. I'm like, okay, so there is a population. Definitely here. Go get them.
Looking, beyond the situation that we're in right now, what do you see for the future of Cornerstone Clinic? How do you see the services evolving in the medium to long term for your company?
we still focus on hiring only the best of the best. So it doesn't matter what, like, I've got a psychologist who does ADHD. I've got a GP. I've got 2 dentists. I've got a vascular surgeon. But these are the people who are at the top of their game. So I only want to hire people and work with people who match where my husband is on a medical level. We just want to be in a business of trust, hopefully. I mean, I've been invited to open many other cornerstones within the GCC as well, within the UAE. But I always think, you have to think really carefully. I don't want to over expand. I don't want to over push. You'll always know as an entrepreneur when the right opportunity presents itself. I've also thought, well, maybe start a whole different line of work, different business. I don't know. Because I think in this time, let's be positive. Let's see, like COVID, so many businesses came out of COVID. And I think the same will happen. Dubai always bounces back. And I think lots of opportunities will come from this.
Do you think work-life balance exists? I mean, being a mother and running your own business, is it a myth, or can it actually be achieved?
I think it's 100% myth. And I think trying to strive for that balance in itself is guilt-making. You would feel guilty because you said, okay, it's got to be 50-50 or 75-25. You're going to feel guilty if you don't meet your targets. I think parenting is being present for the times that you can be there. We are so involved in our children's lives. We know everything that's happening with them. But there are days I can go 2 days without hardly seeing my kids. But I also remembered I was in boarding school since the age of 10. So there were many days I didn't see my parents and I was okay. And so I was like, okay, my child hasn't seen me my child's only seen me for an hour of the day, but they're also at school. They're so busy. And so by the time they get home, but we try to have dinner together as many nights as possible. But I don't kick myself. I don't, beat up myself. My children still come to me. They share everything with me. I'm present if they ever need to talk. But I won't chase the unchaseable. Because at the end of the day, women have really had to work in many countries. I look at women in China who have worked, looked after children all their lives. My grandmother had 9 children and she still worked. You just do what you do.
How do you put behind whatever can happen at the clinic on a day-to-day basis and make sure you're still really present with your kids and you can enjoy, life outside of business, whether it be any of the hobbies, going out to a restaurant or just anything?
So I am a Christian, so I do have a lot of faith, and I can't worry about things so this was a very different me. Before I used to worry about everything, but worrying doesn't bring you anything. So whatever happens, you just have to say, I can't do anything. Can I do anything about this now? And, one of the biblical examples is, do not worry about tomorrow, for today has enough worry about itself. So if I think, and in this war situation, do I have enough money for my family to live today? I do. Fine. And you can even do, can I feed my family for the next 21 meals? I can. Yeah. So, what else can I do? And eventually things always work out. But I think if you allow your mind to be broken with worry and stress, it actually doesn't bring anything to the table at the end. And I've learned that the hard way many times. I have been worrying about things that never came true, like being stressed out and start shouting at my kids, being stressed out about something that also didn't come true. It doesn't work. It doesn't not. It's best to just be relaxed like an Australian.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, this whole podcast is about helping people find what they want to do, helping us to see what we like. But do you think that passion is kind of a good place to start when looking for something that you want to do? And how do people find that passion? Because you've shown that it's okay to like not know straight away early on that what you'll be doing in 10, 20 years time, right? So how do people find what they want to do and what they want to start with?
I think you start with something, you know. The problem is not starting at all. If you both put in $100,000 into something, you're going to make it work, because that is a really painful amount of money to lose. But if you guys have no skin in the game, it could be something as simple as coming up with some app that you got to sell, but then you're like, are people going to pay 0.99 cents just to download this app? You've got to figure all of that out. Sometimes it's easier just to even have a retail space and say, we're going to sell these things, and you learn. But I think it's definitely hard, but I think if you try to I don't think you need to find your passion. I really don't. I think you should also try and work in some of the EO companies that you've met that interest you. Offer yourself as interns for a month together and figure it out and go, yep, I could see us doing this, or I could see ourselves doing that, just for 6 months. Work in different companies, a month at every company. I think you will get a lot of value out of that. You will save for 6 industries that could interest you. And you know what? All these entrepreneurs, most of them have the most boring businesses ever, but they make a lot of money. It's not the fun businesses that ever make money. It's actually pain stripping stuff, you know, and actually if you see them, they're very successful at it because nobody else wants to do these businesses. So it doesn't have to be your passion. It's just they all move goods, but in different ways, right? So you got to decide whether you want to do service, manufacturing. You kind of go along those lines. Maybe that's easier because your father, for example, is in a service industry. Other people are in manufacturing, but that's also huge investments, puts out. You know, other people make furniture, travel. I don't know. It depends also if you like traveling, if you want to travel the world. A lot of their businesses require a lot of travel. Mine doesn't. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's exactly that. Finding it through experience and trying different things. But yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Yeah. And I think working for other entrepreneurs, you'll get to see the ins and outs of their businesses, and you will then discover if you really, you know, want to do it or not.
What's your biggest learning or the best piece of advice that you've learned along your journey that you want to pass on to the new wave of young founders and entrepreneurs looking to start businesses?
Take each day as it comes. And that was the best advice given to me by a lawyer, which is very similar to biblical advice, really. I used to, before opening up the clinic, I was like, oh, but I have this license to do, this contract to do. And I would think of all the things I had to do. And then I was like, and then you just want to stop because it's so overwhelming. But this guy just said, one day at a time. So, you know, when we first had to wait for our licenses, it was meant to come up then. And then they said, no, you need to fix these extra things. So it's another week, and then it's another 2 weeks, and it's another 3 weeks. But his advice literally kept me saying, one day at a time. Didn't get our license today? No problem. Tomorrow's another day. Tomorrow's another day. And if you just do one day at a time, you're not. So what can I do today? You know, there's no point me worrying what I can do in a year to 2 years' time. What can I do today? Where can I change my business, pivot my business today? And that really has saved me on many occasions where I want to fret and scream and go, but it's fine.
So many lessons, so many insights, so many meaningful little ideas that you gave us there. I really appreciate you taking the time out today to join us, which we got to eventually. But no, I think even us looking back on this episode will definitely take a lot out of it, like the little lessons that we can use, and especially that one, just live every day as it comes. So no, I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me, along with like people like Joe and Rashir and and Anthony.
Yeah.